So, hello and welcome. This is one of my 60 conversations for my 60th birthday. And today I am with the lovely Kirstien. I would tell you what her surname is, but I'm not even going to attempt to say that. I'm not going to embarrass myself by trying to so she can share if that feels right for her anyway. I don't know Kirstien very well. I had the pleasure of we have met in person. I had the pleasure of meeting at a beautiful event by the lovely Amy Rogers. If you want to know more about that event, do drop me a comment and I can tell you more, because I think she's planning more of those things. Yeah, and we got on really well at that. So I thought I would love to explore with you, get to know you a little bit better, a little bit more about you, because the few things that I did here, the few things that happened during that weekend felt very exciting. So do you want to introduce yourself and tell people your surname if you wish to, and just tell me a little bit about who you are and what you're up to in the world.
Well, thank you so much. As I just said, I feel really grateful to be having this conversation with you. And how great just to acknowledge you couldn't say my surname. No one can, unless you're Danish. And then in Denmark, it's a Danish surname and it's Bjerregaard. So it doesn't sound like it's spelt. And I always have to spell it. And the irony is that my husband and I actually chose to have that surname. We didn't go for much simpler surnames, which was my original name, which is Webb, and his original name, which is Peterson. And my kids are forever going, why did you do that? Like, literally. Anyway.
Oh, wow, what an amazing story just there in itself.
Yeah. We did this, we thought it was a good idea at the time. And actually, yeah, it's different. So that's my surname. And part of, I guess, who I am is that being a mum of 3 children. They are 12, 15 and 18 now. I've been with my partner Mox for 28 years, I was recalling. And he works a lot overseas, and we live near Totnes now in Devon. And we combine like just everyone's quite active lives, whilst being out in the countryside and having this field next to our house, which we've gradually done more and more in. And part of what excited me about talking to you is, you've got that field of dreams that you're developing and with your land and stuff. And our field we refer to as the field of possibility, and I've created a CIC for that. And it's like, oh, what's that about? What's this field of dreams about? What's this field of possibilities about? And I think maybe similar to your work, in my work, no matter in what capacity I'm working, whether I'm just going to get rid of stop. My dog's called Zen.
I love it. Great name for a dog.
Yeah, no matter what capacity I'm working in, I guess I'm pointing people towards understanding who they are as that space of possibility and how we're designed that way. And I do that when I work in hospitals with maternity health staff. I do that when I'm doing counselling, when I'm doing coaching, when I'm working with small groups or large groups. It feels like I'll adapt it to the context. It will be relevant to wherever people are at in their working lives or in their personal lives. And yet looking in this direction just enables people to be more free and be more alive in the moment and drawing on that resourcefulness. Like you said earlier to me, it's like never-endingly exciting to see what shows up from there.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? That's I love that, the possibility. I think that is what is so beautiful when we do explore inwards. We kind of say looking in this direction. To me, it is exploring ourselves inwards. It's very, when we're born, when we're growing up, it's very easy to see the world outside and to see what's going on there and get very drawn into it, and we're meant to. We are here having a human experience, and that's amazing. And I love the world. I think it's a beautiful place. Just before we press record here, we were talking, we're both in Devon, and it's quite a miserable day here in Devon today. It's quite grey, and but we said there is still such beauty here. and it's really, there is such beauty in the world. And obviously the form and the formless at the deepest level are one and the same. But I think it is, because we can see this and it is so clear and obvious, we tend to go out there a lot. We tend to do that. And then at some point we realize that we feel restricted. We feel like there's something missing. We feel like something, and actually exploring inwards is a beautiful exploration, and actually kind of lights up what's outside once we're exploring it from the inside, weirdly.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I didn't even know that experience came from the inside out.
Had no
Like,
idea.
I studied psychology, did a PhD in psychology, and I didn't ever really consider what created the experience of being me until I came across the principles. And so I find that when I'm working with people, they just generally haven't considered it. Like you say, we just walk around in a world as if that's it, we're just living our life. We engage with the things that happen. We're, what's happened in our past, the circumstance, and we go, this is it. And we don't see, and so what seems to be possible is to do with that, if you like, that what seems to be out there. Not as in, oh, am I actually, is that actually coming through me? And what's that about? And how confronting to first look at that, and then how creative that gets.
Initially, very, very much so. I started to explore this when I had made a terrible, terrible mess of my life. So to kind of even consider that I had some part in that, let alone, yes, all you, but this whole, I actually had a part in that. I very much believed that I was a victim of circumstances, other people, things, and there was nothing, it wasn't really to do with me. And then gradually beginning to see, initially gently, I had a part to play in it. And then, the more and more I explored, but then, like you say, absolutely seeing the freedom and the possibility that opens up when we kind of see, actually, when I am different, when I show up differently, when I open up to what is possible through me and see things are not happening to me but through me, wow, that's a huge eye-opener. You feel much more like you're in a playground then, don't you?
Yeah. And I'm curious because I often this is somewhere where it gets with people, like people I work with, is often they get to start seeing that, oh yeah, actually how experience comes about is through our perspective and thought and stuff. And then they go, wow, and then they go to blame.
Yes.
And they go to like, okay, if this is coming through me, then I'm responsible. And if I'm responsible, that means like, well, it's my fault. And I find moving people through that, sometimes we can get stuck there. I know I did. I know when I first came across this, well, actually, I'd been doing stuff with landmark with people I work with who are trained in landmark forum. Do you know, like, and so a narrative transformational therapy. So I sort of had an idea about, okay, it comes from the inside out, but then I couldn't get past. Then somehow, what's wrong with me that I can't create something better? What's wrong with me that I can't improve my relationships? And in coming across the 3Ps, I got to see the innocence in it, actually. And I got to see that the neutrality in it. And that made it all much more playful and creative. But whilst I was still in blame and fault, and that was sticky for me. And what was your experience?
Yeah, the same in many senses. I mean, I came across the principles. That was kind of my awakening moment. I hadn't really seen anything else much, and that was kind of the first. And the first thing I actually really saw was that, in spite of everything that had happened to me and my children, we weren't broken. I deeply saw, it's interesting because but where I heard that and how that I saw that that was not said, which again just shows the creativity of who we are. You know, when someone speaks, it can speak to us in a way that we're not even, you know, how did that land for me? I'm not sure. But then it was, before that, I was very much, I hated myself and was blaming myself. And then I came across the principles, and I think it was, I kind of saw the innocent, that it wasn't true, that what I was seeing, that my children were broken, and that was something fundamentally I had created in them, something that was going to, you know, haunt them for life, and that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. And I think the first thing I saw was, oh, that's not true. And then, so my experience of people blaming has been much more, when I have spoken about that, and then people go, oh, well, if I'm doing it, it's my fault. It's like, yeah. And then it is coming to the point, okay, that it's not helpful to go to fault on either side. And in actual fact, where things got a bit sticky for me was the exact opposite, because my thing had been, I was in this abusive relationship, and so I saw that there was no blame or fault here, and so I saw that in him too. You know, it's like, oh, there's no blame or fault. Blame or fault is pointless. And so then kind of speaking out in the arena where there's a lot of abuse, and kind of saying things like, he's no more to blame than I am. Because interestingly, when we create this victim and perpetrator roles, my experience of that was, me as a victim, I was excused for what I had innocently done. And it was like, yeah, you were a victim. And it's like, you didn't know any better. And yet they were kind of saying the perpetrator did this on purpose and knew what they were doing. And kind of what I really see is, they were as innocent. They didn't know what they were doing any more than I knew what I was doing. We were, you know, it's kind of the one negated the other. It's kind of like, yeah, how can we say that I didn't know what I was doing, but this person did? And I'm not saying that is never, you know, I'm not saying that, but am I? Yeah, maybe I actually am. I think when we do these things, there is an innocence behind what we are doing, and we can step into learning and doing something different. And even the idea that we can do something different, even when, you know, I have recently watched someone destroy something beautiful in their life, and it's like, wow, you haven't got to a place where you could do that differently. And I, you know, I really felt a sadness for that. And it's like, you could call this person, you could blame them, and you could say, you know, they're still being a perpetrator and they're still doing this, but it's like, wow, you have just destroyed probably the one thing left in your life through not being able to see enough to do something different. To know that there was that, to know that it's, I think it's about choice in one sense, isn't it? It's like, we do always have a choice, but we have to see that there's a choice and know that there's a choice to make it.
And there is no choice when we don't see it.
No,
So
exactly.
yeah, like what you're pointing to there is really that we're all living in these separate realities
Mm.
unknowingly, and then our reality shift within ourselves depending where we're paying attention. And so it seems like we're making choice, but we're making choice within our awareness, aren't
Yes,
we, all
yes.
the time? And that's why sometimes it's incomprehensible why someone chose to do what they did. Honestly, it's incomprehensible why I choose to do the things I do. Still
Me
now with
too.
more awareness.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? Again? You sent
Yeah.
that reactive thing? Again, you're nagging your kids when
Yeah.
you know that doesn't help. But I'm in that moment, that's what occurs to me to do. And the feeling, the intense feeling of urgency that accompanies that. And I'm like, you know, reacting from that place, not aware. Even with the kind of knowing there is something else possible, I'm not aware enough to come from it.
Yeah. In
And
that.
yeah.
And I definitely think, from my personal experience, for me, I would say that is a practice. That
Mm,
is, you know, and almost like we talked about the field of dreams and the field of
mm,
possibility, and for part of that for me is about deliberate creation. And I see, the more I deliberately create myself as someone who has more choice, the more choice I get in those moments. It's
mhm,
kind of like, really, we speak these things into being, and it's kind of like, yeah. And the more that I see myself as someone who sees possibility, even through a fog of my thinking, the more I see that possibility. We are that creative. And when we kind of have these, there's like, as we work with people, and you don't, it's not about being mean or any of that kind of thing, but it is seeing, we speak things into being all of the time. And
mm,
when we, at some point, there's a kind of a moment to say, right, okay, create yourself as someone who has more ability to do these things, rather than recreating someone who didn't have that choice in that moment. And again, it's not about blame or fault, it's just stepping further in and stepping further in, and kind of seeing the innocence of, oh yeah, I kept doing that thing, and then I just kept saying, oh yeah, I'm someone who does that, I'm someone who does that. And you're innocently recreating someone who does that. It's kind of like seeing, wow, the
mm,
field of possibility, it's endless. What we can see, what becomes available, what wakes up in us, is just, oh, it's inconceivable what we can do with
mm.
it. And so, yeah, just keeping on adding into that is so beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. And I often like, I think I came up with the idea of calling it a field of possibility like in about 2016. And I stood at the entrance of the field, and I was with a coach then. And I said to her, I think this could be a field of possibilities. And I interpreted how she looked at me like, what the hell are you thinking of? You're way too big for your boots. This is just like some like rambling field, long grass, nothing going on in it. And I had young kids at the time, and I was knackered, and I thought, yeah, that's just pipe dream stuff, and felt a little bit shamed, a little bit embarrassed. And then gradually over these years, I've seen more about what it is to be a field of possibility. And I used to get a bit intimidated by it, I think, because I would think, oh, that means I need to say yes to everything. And
Because
if
it's
you're,
possible to say yes.
and if you're someone like me who's like, go for it, like quite high energy, and like never,
Yes.
but never wanting to say no. And how
Yeah.
good is it? What possibility shows up when you actually do say no, though? So
Yes.
I started to, and I would say I'm still totally being a field of possibility is my edge. That
Mm.
question, am I being a field of possibility right now? Or am I being field of predictability, or field of, you know, oh, I don't know, same as before. And sometimes I can't be a field of possibility, It's like, yeah,
Mm.
no, I just noticed that I'm not. And that's just how it is.
Yeah.
But what I saw recently is last year, I was being mentored by Linda Pettit. I've done quite a lot of work over the years with Linda, and became good friends. And she was coming over here for a tour, and like she was going to
Yes.
do
Yes. Yeah.
co-lead this woman's retreat in the field. And just a month before it was going to start, she found out she couldn't come over because Bill was ill and she couldn't make it, which was absolutely gutting. And I had really only ever thought to do this retreat in order to work alongside her and how great it would be. And in a way, the field got developed during the time I was working alongside being with her. So
Mm.
it was like, this will be the first retreat I
Wow.
do with
Yeah.
Linda. How lovely. Anyway, she couldn't come. And we had 20 people signed up. And I felt like, well, they're only coming to see Linda. And well, why should we go ahead with it? And so there was this kind of time when I was actually on holiday in Canada, my sister was here, and we were going back and forth. So I was like, let's just not do it. No one's going to want to come. So stressful. I mean, when you set up something new for the first time in a field that you've yet to kind of put water into and all of that, compost toilets still being built, there's kind of like a lot to be done. And I went back and forth and just like, and of course Linda was like, of course you should go for it, you know, but I was like, no. And I'm like, anyway, we went for the next step and saw something else. We put out something like, okay, is anyone still interested in coming? And show turned out more than half people still were. And so we did step by step. And at some point I went, do you know what? There's a field of possibility whether I say yes or no to this. You know, actually, if we decide not to go ahead, stuff will become possible out there. If we decide to go ahead, stuff will become possible out there. I'm so glad we went ahead. We had a ball. It was brilliant beyond my imagination. But had we not, other stuff would have become possible. And so I think that seeing that the possibility is forever unfolding, no matter what decision you make, takes the pressure off making the right decision.
Yes. Oh gosh. Yeah.
So yeah, and I like that, because then it even takes off the pressure of having to be a field of possibility. You know, it's almost like, I think we're more likely to be a field of possibility when we're in an expansive state, when we're in a relaxed, open place. If I'm putting my pressure on myself to be a certain way, I think I can get quite contracted.
Yes.
So I think in all my work now, I see, okay, where are people up, and where am I at in terms of my expansiveness or my contraction? And that's another way of seeing it, you know, beyond what we're paying attention to or what's going on.
I love that. I love that. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. That whole, and I remember years ago hearing something that Michael Neal said, and he was kind of telling a story and sort of said, you know, we're open, we're looking in this direction, we're seeing something, you know, something like a retreat, something like that comes along, and we then go, you know, we're working with our higher self, source energy, whatever, you know, that's coming through us, and it's expanded, we're hearing the possibility, and then at some point we kind of go, yeah, I got it from here, don't worry, I can do this, I know where you're headed, I know what you're doing, you know, I've got this, I'll do this on my own.
I love that.
all that possibility, it's like, oh yeah, they were the one bringing the possibility, you know, that expanded self, that connection to all that is what was bringing the possibility in. And it's kind of like you say, it's noticing, when are we in that flow of all that we are, opening us up to this possibility, and when do we kind of go, oh yeah, totally know what this is now, don't need any more possibility here. So we're kind of totally so that, yeah, that is huge to notice that. And then the other thing that you said, this is something I have really been seeing in so many arenas, and really kind of getting lots of lessons around this, and this is the idea that there is a right thing to do, and we have to work out, this was me, I speak for myself, I spent so long trying to work out the right thing. And it's kind of like, okay, like you say, you know, if I found myself in a situation like you with your retreat, it would be like, well, one of these things is right and the other one is wrong.
Yeah.
And then kind of trying to explore them from there, and kind of going, okay, would I be right if I did this, so wrong if I did that, so would it be better that way, and trying to decide, rather than, like you say, just knowing to make a decision. And either one of those keeps you open to possibility. It is very much, when we have those moments of, there's a right and wrong here and I've got to find it, there's a right or wrong and I've got to find it, that contracts us.
Yeah, that's so true. I love that Rumi poem. We tend to have it out, you know, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing or
Yes.
right doing. There
Yeah,
is a
there's a
field.
field of
I'll
possibility.
meet you there. And then it's beautiful, the rest of it, but I never remember the rest of it. But I I point there to people because I think we exist inside right or wrong most of the time. Am I
Yes.
getting this right? Am I getting it wrong? Are they wrong or are they right? I work with couples. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
We spend so much of our time in wrong, right. If it's not thinking our partner's wrong or right, we're thinking whether we're wrong or right.
mm,
And exactly what you said, it's contracting, it's
yes.
narrowing. And
Yeah.
when we can be in that field, that space, and for a time I had it up on the kitchen wall, and I think when I got it, I used to point to it with my husband and go, I don't think we're in this field, are we? And we were like, no, we're not. As opposed to keep conversation going from that, like, I'm right, you're wrong,
Yeah.
whatever. But I think that it's a place to go to in so many ways when we remember,
Mm,
that what if I wasn't considering whether this was right or wrong, that I was right or wrong, they're right. Yeah.
yeah. If we're just, there's just a decision to be made
Yeah.
sometimes. And equally,
Next step, isn't it? It's
yeah,
literally like there is
do
just,
the next
you
right step.
can't know. You can't know. So it's literally, what's the closest thing to me to do right now? And I don't know about you, but for a long time, and no, still now, let's be honest, right? I get carried away in my planning for the future and my imagining, and I'm so busy seeking something ahead of myself, and then kind of getting cross, I'm not getting it, or getting like, oh my God, I need to put more work in there.
Mm.
And then I forget to look at like the email that come in that day that's like wanting to pay me for some work tomorrow. Go figure. And I'm like, it's like that. It's like, okay, all that we need to do actually is in a way get into that, but be as clear as we can in the moment, take the next step. Even if we're not clear, you take the next
Mm,
step and you get to see what you see then.
yeah.
It's everything becomes easier.
Yeah.
Tell me about your field of dreams. I'd love to hear more about that.
Wow, yeah, that was definitely a strange one. So I've realized since I've been doing this that this has been something I've wanted to do for much longer than I realized, actually. And basically it was just build my own home. It's just been, and it was when I started to talk about that, I was actually, I started to talk about it actually just before the land actually belonged to us, and it now does. And it's a building plot that we've bought to build a home for me and my partner. And it was when I started to talk about it, like some people who had known me for a long time kind of started saying, oh yeah, you've always sort of said you wanted to do that. And I hadn't even realized that, interestingly. I hadn't noticed that, I had been, that had always been, but it was, I kind of saw, yeah, I've always had this idea that I would really love to build my own home. And it was actually when we were buying the land, we hadn't got enough money to buy the land. So I started to speak about it and share and ask, open up for possibilities, basically, and talk to people. There were a few people that I knew had been, were thinking about maybe working with me at different times. So I was just reaching out to people and sort of saying, I need to raise this money to get this land. We had some conversations. Would you be interested in us, working together in some way or whatever, and reaching out to people. And actually, it was really great to have this thing that I was creating to help me to do things that otherwise I perhaps wouldn't never have done. That opened up all sorts of possibilities.
Yeah.
And it was actually a lady that I was speaking to and sort of saying, just talking in that way, sort of saying, this is what I'm doing. I'm reaching out to as many people to ask if they've got any ideas, if they've got any suggestions. Is, me, you see what I do. What do you see that I may be missing, or is there something I can do for you, or do you want to make a donation or anything like this? I was speaking to this one lady, and it was her that just said, she said, oh my gosh, she said, this is like your field of dreams. And it just kind of stuck. The next thing I wrote something about it, I just wrote field of dreams on it. And it's just been, the project then has just been called Field of Dreams, and it's not really a field at all, but
Well, it's a metaphysical field.
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, which is taking form through a house you're building, right? And
Yeah,
whatever else comes from that house, comes from, like you say, actually being in play with something like that.
Yes.
You know, putting to test. I think it's so good when we're like, when we're practicing what we're preaching, you know,
Yeah.
like
That's
we're
always
putting
been,
into, we're
yeah.
practicing, okay, coming from possibility. And then if there's something that seems out unattainable, like something that seems something that other people do, well, then it's like, well, come on,
Yeah.
check it out. And that's what you got up to.
That is definitely, you know, and the first thing that looked unattainable was us even having this land. You know, it was kind of like, when I first saw it, I knew the minute that I stepped into, it's an old agricultural barn with like a garden area outside of it. And the minute I stepped into the barn, I actually said to the estate agent, "Oh, this is mine. I'm going to live here." And I had like a knowing that that was what was going to happen. And and he said, "Oh, you know, put an offer in pretty quick. We've had quite a fair bit of interest and what have you." So we sort of got in the car to go home, and my partner said to me, "You do know how much money we've got in the bank, right? You do know that we can't have this." I was kind of like, "Well,
Small
yeah,
thing.
yeah." Why would we let that stop us? Yeah. Why would we let a small thing like that stop us? You know? And so, you know, yeah, it was just a dream then. And then a year later, pretty much to the day, my partner actually said something. He said, "Oh, I've actually seen that the barn that we went to see is still up for sale." And so we went to see it again, and things had changed in that year. And interestingly, we had got some money. We hadn't got enough, but we had got some money. So I made a crazy offer. It just came out of my mouth while we were there. And the vendor asked for more, and I made the offer of every penny that we had, like looking down the back of sofas and everything. You know, that was every penny that we had in our savings between us. And it was like, okay, so then, but the vendor asked for a little bit more. So then I just said yes. So then it was like, we had to create some possibilities. We had to do this. So I kind of had, from the time that I had said I was going to buy this land until the solicitors had done everything they were doing to come up with the shortfall. And yeah, we've done that. And even now it's kind of like, yeah, we are building a home on that land. But that I'm absolutely going to have to be open to possibilities and walk my talk and step into what I share with people to make that a possibility, to make that a thing, to make it, to bring it into reality.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. And that, you know, you kept going in that, you know,
Yeah.
not knowing what would unfold. I had something similar in the field. One of my dreams was always to have a lake, a swim pond. And so that required getting water, right? So we had someone come round, and they come round. You might be tempted. I don't know if you could put it in your garden, but they'll come round and they'll dig for free to see if they can dig you a borehole that will get you drinking water.
Yeah.
And so they came in, and they did it, and they couldn't find anything. They had a huge amount of mess, kicking up loads of gravel and granite and all over the neighbour's house, and it was like a bit of a disaster. And then we were like, but surely we live near a river, that must be possible. And they were like, no, it's not, but we'll bring in the diviner of the area, you know, a water diviner.
Yeah.
And he's the person who does divining across the whole of the southwest. He for sure will know, is this possible or not? So he comes along and he walks up our drive and he looks at the land. He says, there's no way you'll dig water. There's no way you'll find water here. And he walked around the field just for a short time, but he was so sure there was no water. And so I was like, really let go of it. I was just like, actually, that's just not going to be possible. Bugger. You know, like quite despondent, but hey ho, it's just, we've done our best. It's not happening. And then a couple of years later, and we started to be out in the field more. We started to build this roundhouse shelter. I was like, I do really want that swim pond. Why wouldn't we just give it another go? And I don't know what made me think. I mean, how nuts was that? Why would you bring someone in again, having had all that assurance that it wasn't going to be there? And we got this other contractor came in and they found water in a different spot. And then from that, we were able to then create a natural swim pond because it fills the swim pond, and yeah, it's definitely a dream fulfilled for me, and I love being in that most days. But it was funny how, I don't know why I suddenly went, we're going to give it another go. Like, you
Yeah.
know, how you went back to that house. Look, and
Yeah.
it was like, you probably let go of it as a dream, right? You went, this is not going to happen. And yet it showed up again. And
Yeah.
you went, okay, I'm re-engaging now. And
Yeah. 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 There was
it's,
definitely, there was a knowing in it. It was kind of like, you're going to do this, but then there was also a bit like when they're, it's the reality. If I'm facing the reality of it, it's
yeah.
not going to happen. And I think, I was just, I kind of thought, well, I'll just put it like you. It's like, okay, well, I'll just put it out there. It's absolutely what I want, but I can't do it now. That time there isn't a way. If I try to put anything in motion now, I'll probably end up in prison for saying I could afford, buy something and then not have any money when the moment came to hand it over or something. So it's like, yeah, you just can't do it. But it is, yeah. And so probably I would say similar to you, there was a letting go, but not a complete, there was still sort of a seed of something
Yeah.
there. And I think that again is the possibility, the expansion, the looking towards the allness of everything, divinity. To me, there is no circumstances that mind can't change. And when we are open to that possibility, that's like, and what I see is what I've seen again and again and again. If there's a circumstance we don't like, as I said, there's nothing I don't think that mind can't change. But if mind doesn't change that, they change you. And either way, whether they change that thing, you get changed in the process of that. Or if they don't change that, you get changed in the process of that. And there's so much growth and possibility in that. And so, yeah, very much to me, just moving to a stage. And I said something there, about facing reality. And what I have really, really seen, and, how I live now when I remember and to the best of my ability, is I'm not here to face reality. I'm here to create it. It's like when I get into, usually when I'm in a space of facing reality, I'm in fear. It's kind of, and it's not ignoring it or any of those, it's not listening, and it's not ignoring. It is an acknowledgement, and then an acknowledgement of the possibility. Kind of seeing, yeah, we are not as fixed as we believe ourselves to be, and nothing is, nothing is as solid as it seems.
Yeah, it's so true. I think one of the ways I point this out to clients, and because it started to make sense to me, is that I can't know what I don't know. And so I think I related to possibility a bit like, well, here's all the possibilities from what I knew.
Yeah.
And so people would sit at me and go, I think you're talking gobbledygook, like here's my circumstance, here's the trauma I've experienced, here's the reality of what it's like to be on a labor ward with reduced staffing and a birth that's gone wrong, and and it's like, that is all very real in terms of what's happening.
Yes.
And yet there is an experience people having of that situation that's being created by what they're paying attention to in the moment. And that, like, how we can relate to it is infinite beyond what we can know right now. And I think in times of my life, I think back to, I don't know, like if I thought about the relationship I would have with my parents when I was a teenager, there was a lot of conflict in our family. My dad and I had a really quite unbearable relationship. He was quite abusive at times. It got really difficult. I left home, got involved with social services. It did not seem to me like I would end up having a family that I would be proud to be part of, or like continue in that way. It really felt like the best I could do was stop being in harm's way and get out of there. And where I'm at today is in a relationship with my parents and my siblings beyond what I knew to be possible then. I really enjoy them, really enjoy their company. My parents help out create things in the field. They're amazing grandparents. And it's been a process. It's been a process along those years. But I didn't know that then. I didn't know that I do work that I love as much as I do now, when I was very insecure doing types of work I was doing when I was working overseas. It's like, I say to people, yeah, right now you can't see anything other than you can see. And yet think back to times in your life when you didn't know you'd have what you have now. And it's like, yeah, so I think it's that. It's almost, we can't know what might be possible, but we can know that we don't see it.
Yeah, we
That's
can know
part of it.
there's
So
there's
there's the next
possibility
thing to
there that we
go,
don't
what
see.
might I not, the
Yeah.
next thing to go, oh, I'm just not seeing anything now.
Mm.
And then, okay.
Mm. And we are an integral part of the creation of everything. It's like there isn't, when we look at the reality around us and see, well, it's like this, and this person's like this, and this has happened, and that's what's going on. Like you say, we're in an understaffed labour ward, we're, with a birth that's gone wrong, whatever. It's kind of like, yeah, but we are an integral part of the creation of that. And when we change, the creation changes. And that, the possibility in that is infinite. And, it comes to, so there is also, there is, how we view what is, it changes, our view of it can make it seem very different, but there's even more on offer there too. Because there are not circumstances or things or people or anything that are out there that are nothing to do with who we are being, who we are showing up as. And so when we are an integral part of it, there is, ultimately, when we look in this direction, what we see is there is oneness. And so, what we do is part of the creation. Who we are being is part of the creation of that. So when we, however that is, even if it is just, like you say, being in, I can't see what I can't see, just letting go to that extent, we've changed. When we are in a state of, this is what is, and I am facing it, we are part of the creation of that being a fact. When we are kind of like, right, this is what is, I am a part of this, what other possibilities exist here? And that's when miracles happen. And miracles, there are too many places where things that just seem impossible become possible. And it's like, as we step into being something different, creating ourselves differently, like I'm sure the person that you are now, and we're always doing this, it's not even, to me, all that's happened to me is I've become more aware of that. I've seen it, I talk about like conscious creation. It's just, yeah, I'm more aware of that as a possibility, apart from when I'm not, like you say, but I'm generally more aware of that as a possibility. And the more that we open to those possibilities, the more those possibilities show up in our lives in ways that literally blow our mind. Like you say, when it's, if somebody is saying there's no water here, there's no possibility of water here, you would think that is, okay, that shut down that possibility. And then a miracle, what is that then? A water diviner and someone digging for it said, absolutely, there's no water here. And yet there is water there. That's miraculous that shows up in that way.
I remember when I worked with Interbe, this narrative transformation organization, I remember being coached by one of the people there, and I was talking to him about like my relationship, and I think I was having a bit of a moan about Mox, my husband, and he said, well, there's a couple of things, like, firstly, you are entirely responsible for how your relationship shows up in your life. And I was like, yeah, no, actually, where I'm at, Simon, let me tell you, is that there's two of us. We come together, we have this space in between us, and we create our relationship out of that. That's what I buy into. That's very advanced, let me tell you. So anyway, I sat with that and over the years, I've really seen that, you know, actually how my relationship is with Mox it comes through how I create it. And one of the things he gave me to do, if you like, a practice to do, which I share when I do training with people, was I had spent, oh God, so much of my life, and actually what my mom would tell me, and my, you know, like, it was a bit like, you know, you can really help people out by letting them know what doesn't work. You can really, do you know what? I know, you know, they're doing really well, but make sure you point out where things are going to go wrong.
Which
That's
always
how
goes down well in a relationship.
that's going to go well. Like, I'm going to make the most contribution to our well-being together by pointing out where he's getting things wrong and negating to tell him what was going right. But that was how it worked for me. I thought I was being most helpful doing that. And he went, well, what if, just what if instead, for a couple of weeks, every day, you choose to acknowledge him for who he is in your life and how he shows up and the difference he makes. And not only you could choose to do it with him, but you could choose to do it with your children. You could do it with anyone you meet. And I was a bit skeptical. I was a bit like, yeah, right, that's just kind of contriving something. I'm going to have to fake it. He's going to see through it. And but I went ahead and gave it a go. And after a kind of initial awkward feeling, what I got to see is there were so many times when it would occur to me why he meant so much to me, why my kids showed up a certain way. And all it was is I just shared it with them rather than took it for granted. And I got to feel better because, of course, like, we get oxytocin shots when we're thinking about how nice something is. So it then has just become part of my way of being in my relationship with him, that before was a way of being that was totally opposite. And the ripple effects of being that way in my relationship, in terms of what showed up for the kids. My middle son was 6 at the time, and I wrote to him about who he was to me, and then I got this really lovely thing back from him out of the blue in his, like, 6-year-old badly spelt handwriting about who I was to him, which I have up on my wall. And it was just like, oh, we get to impact, like, we get to influence people. That ripple effect, what happens if we show up looking for what's right in people, looking for, like, how they make a difference to our lives, and we speak to that and we notice that, and it's magical. And I do it at the end of, like, days when I work with midwives and doctors, and like, they'll go around in small groups and they'll do it, and they'll start off in the awkwardness, and some of them will, and I'll be like, we just talk through that thing, and they walk away going, I'll go and give that a go. I never realized that was even a sensible thing to do. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, that is one of such a simple thing to do, that we just, and we are, you know, certainly, you know, we're obviously both in the UK here, and it's very British to not acknowledge, you know, to not do that, isn't it? To kind of just, oh yes, take it for granted that you'll be like that and I'm like this, and not actually acknowledge both ourselves. A really interesting thing happened to me not that long ago. So Dr. Rani Bora, who I'm great friends with, and we're working together on our amazing conference. She shared something on Facebook about a thing that she was doing that her coach had suggested to her, and it was like getting a book, and it was kind of a big, like, A4 book with about 100 pages in or something, and writing, just filling this book with self-acknowledgement. And I kind of thought, yeah, that sounds really, really nice. And I just thought, oh, you know what, I'll have a go at that. And I got a book. And it was really it really surprised me how difficult it was to just continually write self-acknowledgements, you know. And I was sitting there thinking, well, I can't think of anything. I can't think of anything. It's like,
what's coming to mind is all the things I don't like about myself. They're oozing out.
Wow, that was really fascinating as well, to kind of see that we're not, you know, echoing in my mind was, you know, oh, bossy boots, being big for your boots, who are you to say that about you? These kinds of things. And it's like, wow, you know, we're really not taught that actually. And you know, it's not about inflating our ego and making something, but it is genuinely about, like you say, genuinely looking to a person and what they really mean to you, the way they show up, and then turning that back on yourself and kind of going, you know, when I show up in that way, good things happen.
Yeah.
And acknowledging ourselves for it. So yeah, like both ways around, it's a fascinating thing to do, which I mean, I can't speak for the countries, but I really can see the whole British thing about we don't sort of do that kind of thing. And it's crazy madness, isn't it?
Yeah. And for me, I think it's just giving airtime to it. We give a lot of airtime to what's going wrong and what's negative. The
Yeah.
whole of the mental health industry is full of giving airtime to what's wrong. And I think you can see that from a biological survival point of view. Like we pay
Yeah.
attention to what we're afraid of and what we're most at risk at. So our muscle for doing that has been developed over time. We then socially get told to do that. We think finding solutions to problems comes from looking in more depth at what doesn't work. And we negate to use the capacity we have within us to see things in a different way because we feel better. And so we take for granted when we feel better. We take for granted when we see what we value things in people, and we don't give airtime to it. But by giving airtime to it, we actually just
Expand it.
expand again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have life-giving consciousness, which creates more of what we look towards, what we think about, so actually looking in that direction it's hugely
Mm,
powerful, isn't it?
mm. Yeah, yeah. Such a
Mhm.
privilege, isn't it, to
It is, yeah.
keep
Um,
looking in that direction and be a student of it and point people there and yeah, keep inquiring about it, keep checking it out.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
Mm.
Kirstien, if people want to get in contact with you, find out more, come to one of your retreats on your beautiful field, how can people find out more about you and who you are, what's going on with you?
Yeah, so the best way is to go to the website, which is field-of-possibility.org. We've got another women's retreat coming up on the summer solstice, which is going to be on the full moon, so it will be on the pink moon. We've got quite a few people coming back from the last one, but some places still available. And that's going to be quite an intimate experience. We keep the numbers to 12 with a woman called May who does lead singing, another woman, Helen, who leads movement stuff. My sister and I facilitate that space. And it's really about women coming together and sharing who they are and what they're up to in a way that I think bigger events don't enable so much. And so people have a very embodied experience of being love, and they get into the swim pond and in the sauna and hang out in the Pointless Point, which is a stone circle. So that's available. And then we're also, we run monthly wellbeing sanctuaries. So you can just come for the day and be in the field of possibility. And again, we point to what's at the source of our natural wellbeing, and that's in conversation and round a fire. And you can get in the pond again. I mean, if you don't like water, you don't need to, but it's always there. So yeah, people can reach out and find out more about what I do in terms of my one-to-one work and organizational work at that website too.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I
Thank
will
you.
put I'll put the link to the website under this. So I've
Yeah.
really enjoyed our time together. That's been a fantastic conversation, a really great exploration. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Deb. And yeah, I look forward to being with you again soon.
Yes, I hope so. I'm sure we will. I really like the idea of coming in. I love swimming in ponds and things, so I really love the idea of coming for a dip there. So we'll have to at least arrange that at some point.
All right.
Lots and lots of love.
Lots of love. Mwah. Take
Thank you.
care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.